Removed from what happened to Infinity Train got canceled, Infinity Train got canceled. Why did they hate Infinity Train? Infinity Train is so cartoons are getting canceled. HBO Max, Infinity Train.
Hi there, my name is Tay, and I'm about to talk a lot about what you ask. Today, I'm going to be talking about Infinity Train, its cancellation, its disappearance from literally everywhere in the world, Cartoon Network's social medias, Spotify, HBO, and why you should watch the show in the first place. Now, let's start talking, and talking a lot. Infinity Train stands out as yet another brilliant cartoon that faced the unfortunate fate of cancellation, but the impact of its disappearance was something we had never seen before in the animation industry. Infinity Train excelled over the course of 4 incredibly imaginative, yet brief seasons, with each of them being only around 11 minutes long. The show's tight narrative structure was not only engaging, but could have easily sustained 20 or more seasons. I mean, each season is about a different character or set of characters traveling through this infinite train in order to discover and connect with themselves, resolve their inner trauma, learn super cool life lessons, and also meet super cool NPCs. I'm talking about you, Alan Dracula. I'm talking about you. I love you. However, a combination of factors ultimately led to its inevitable end. One of those primary reasons for its cancellation stemmed from the creator's envisioned 5th season, which would have been focused on Amelia, an antagonist character introduced in the first season. I won't spoil too much about her backstory or who she is if you haven't seen the show, so this description might be a little bit vague, but this season was intended to delve deeper into Amelia's character, exploring her backstory, her personal journey aboard the train, why she was on it in the first place, and what she was going to do next. Now, viewers such as myself were super excited about this because throughout the show we often see Amelia either in the background or she becomes a significant part of the storyline, and getting a whole season dedicated to her would have been super awesome. However, the network expressed concerns that a main character in her 30s would be less relatable to a younger audience, that it would contain a lack of a child entry point, which is a bunch of baloney, to be quite frank with you. So many cartoons have older protagonists or main characters, like that's just a horrible excuse, to be honest. And also at this point, is this even a kid show anymore? I mean, the creator obviously intended this show to be for children. The 1st and 4th season are recommended for ages 8 and up. The 2nd and 3rd season go up to ages 9 and up, which I feel like even 9 years old is a little bit young for season 3, especially if we're talking the end of season 3. Did you watch that? If you've watched that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, can kids even process whatever that was? Like, I think that scene literally had to be banned in other countries. Like, but I don't even know. I'm not one to talk because when I was 8, I was watching Yandere Simulator gameplays on YouTube, so I guess I'm not one to talk about. Anyway, this decision undermined the show's creative direction and the opportunity to enrich the narrative. But basically, after Cartoon didn't like these ideas, the team kind of created a last-ditch effort in order to save the show by creating a concept art for season 6 to convince HBO Max to let them keep the show running. One of these images was created by Madeline Queer Appel, I'm sorry if I butchered that name, titled Blake PNG, which Owen Dennis eventually released on his Instagram in 2022. Dennis wanted the season to take place in the early 2000s. He wanted to explore the anxiety that he remembered from growing up during this time period, especially due to the terrorist attacks that took place on September 11th. Dennis said in an interview with Comic Book Resources, "I see a lot of parallels to what I experienced as a teenager at the time, to what teens and younger people are experiencing right now." Adding to the theme of guilt for this season, Dennis wanted to explore the idea of guilt by exploring something that both is and is not one's fault. Now, personally, I would have really loved to see this. I feel like Dennis is super good at focusing on different time periods throughout the show, different types of characters, races, sexualities. I love love how inclusive he makes the show, and I feel like he includes such unique stories that I don't see really touched upon in general in media, let alone cartoons. And it's just really cool to see all of these get represented, and it's very obvious that that is his goal, for people to feel found when they're watching his show, to feel represented and feel like they're not alone. However, the team never even got the chance to pitch this idea. Dennis, however, did express his interest in using this setting and time in a different television show if he ever got the opportunity. I would personally watch anything this man creates. If he made a toilet paper company, I'd buy 2-ply. Now I'm going to be discussing what books 7 and 8 could have possibly been. Now, the crew has not really revealed their plans for the 2 final books, although they have shared some information about the storyline. Amelia and Hazel were slated to return at some point, and their relationship as creator and creation would have been explored. I think that would have been awesome to see. Book 8 would have touched upon Alzheimer's disease, inspired by a book Owen Dennis's own grandfather wrote about slowly succumbing to it. That would have been really sad. This guy has a knack for making super sad and dark things and make me sob. And one of the planned books would have centered around an older Tulip, which I would have loved. I love Tulip. I related to Tulip so much. Also gotta mention some of their other season ideas that they had. There were obviously a lot of other emotional and personal issues that Dennis wanted to explore but couldn't do that or mention in the comic book resources article include addiction, having a child, relationships and consent, generational trauma. There are also a lot of concepts that the team has thought of. A few of these include someone falling in love with another person based on their tapes, someone trying to catch the train and study it, someone getting on the train multiple times due to shock from being out in the real world and away from their family for a couple of years. So like I previously said, this show could have easily gone on forever. So what else led to the cancellation besides its getting too adult and the creator having too many good ideas? Well, further complicating the matters was the AT&T merger, which is what, you may ask. Oh boy, here I go.
3, 2, 1.
So
Go!
basically, legal issues involving Warner Bros. And AT&T are largely connected to the Warner Bros. Strategy during COVID-19 pandemic. They thought, hey, since everyone is stuck inside, let's put our movies on a platform called HBO Max so that people don't have to go to the movie theater. And so this caused people to, guess what, not go to the movie theater. And if people aren't going to the movie theater, theaters are gonna close down. This obviously made a lot of filmmakers pretty angry, such as high-level directors like Christopher Nolan, and the director of Dune also voiced his concerns, emphasizing that this decision affected the compensation tied to his film's release. So because of this, lots of stakeholders in Hollywood were like, uh-oh, this is pretty bad for us, isn't it? So they created a lot of contracts saying that films have to have traditional theatrical releases in theaters, because if everyone was switching to streaming, they wouldn't earn as much money. As legal action began to surface, a few filmmakers initiated lawsuits against Warner Bros. For perceived breaches of contract, arguing that the move to release films on HBO Max was not in the line of their agreements, which prioritized theatrical releases. However, many of these cases were eventually settled out of court as both sides sought to avoid prolonged legal battles and the associated negative publicity. The situation was further complicated by AT&T's decision to split off Warner Media, the parent company of Warner Bros. In 2022 as part of a broader restructuring strategy. This spin-off sequentially led to a merger of Discovery Inc., creating a new entity that aimed to position itself more competitively in the streaming market. This transition involved a reevaluation of HBO Max's role and strategy, which cumulated the rebuilding of HBO Max to, you guessed it, Maxx. Very unique, very different. The goal of these changes was to streamline operations and clarify the direction of the combined company, focusing on both theatrical and streaming releases. This latter approach reflects the evolving landscape of media consumption, where audiences increasingly favor on-demand access. Overall, the legal disputes and corporate transformations illustrate the complexities faced by major studios in adapting to a rapidly shifting industry. I hope that made at least a little sense. Anyway, because of all this jazz, it caused a significant shakeup within the company. So many talented crew members who contributed to Infinity Train found themselves jobless, laid off in a bid to cut costs. The new executives failed to recognize the value of this talented team, refusing to rehire them without even thinking about it. Like, hello, you need a team to create a show. Do you think Infinity Train is just gonna magically appear out of the air? Well, I guess they did for some reason. Make it make sense. This was obviously a critical misstep in maintaining the show's quality and production continuity. To add to this turmoil, the merger between Discovery and Warner Bros. Created more financial chaos. New leadership was burdened with the debts incurred from AT&T's previous management decisions. Consequently, the marketing division began to make drastic cuts. As part of these cost-saving measures, numerous titles, including Infinity Train, were removed from the HBO streaming platform where they had originally aired. Now Maxx is removing even more cartoons, children's shows like Sesame Street. Like, what do you mean Sesame Street is homeless right now? Sesame Street? Like, are you kidding? So Maxx is apparently trying to make itself more adult right now, but if Infinity Train had become adult, then wouldn't it be perfect for the platform Maxx was turning into? Right? Well, a question that I have is, would Infinity Train have been cancelled if the show had only primarily aired on HBO Max rather than Cartoon Network? The first 2 seasons of the show were released on Cartoon Network and the other 2 just on HBO. Well, it wasn't supposed to be that way. Dennis revealed in a reply to a tweet, Infinity Train was originally planned to air on HBO Max from the beginning, but due to the streaming service's delay from its original 2019 launch date, the first 2 seasons were aired on Cartoon Network instead. Now, Infinity Train is a show that was meant for streaming. It was made for streaming. Let me explain. There are shows that are made exclusively for streaming purposes, and then there are shows that are made for channel surfing on TV. For instance, a series like Modern Family, where you can tune into any random episode and easily follow along without any prior context. You can still enjoy the show without being confused. Yeah, maybe you don't immediately know every character's name, you don't immediately know who's married and whose kids are whose, but you know enough to mindlessly be entertained with the lives of these 3 diverse but interrelated family setups in the suburban Los Angeles. But now let's look at Infinity Train. In stark contrast, Infinity Train is a heavily serialized with intricate plots that build on one another. You can't just stumble upon season 2, episode 5 and expect to understand what's going on. Even though the show has new main characters every season, doesn't mean you don't have to watch the other seasons before the other one, and you also still have to watch the episodes in order. If a child were to start watching, say, like the 5th episode of the first season, I don't know, and they might be like, Mommy, why is there a talking robot? Is there a robot trying to kill the main character? Mommy, what's divorce? But the complexity of the narrative necessitates that viewers watch the episodes in order, because missing even a single episode could result in confusion and deter engagement of the audience, because you're not going to keep watching a show if you don't know what the heck's going on. Thus, while Infinity Train was crafted for an audience that would ideally binge watch its shows in sequential order, due to its delayed air date, that is what led the show being aired on television, which I believe is a huge factor that led to its cancellation as well. And that goes for a lot of other cartoons and shows in general. Its placement on traditional television made it virtually impossible to thrive. These mounting issues reveal why, from the onset, that the show appeared to be set up for failure against the backdrop of ever-evolving media landscape. Believe it or not, there's still more, a lot more for me to talk about. Not only was Infinity Train pulled from all streaming services, not only was its air date delayed, not only was it cancelled, but it also disappeared from Cartoon Network broadcasts and social media channels. One day, I woke up, I tried to go listen to the Sick Beats of Train to Nowhere on Spotify. gone. You're probably thinking, well, Taylor, at least the creator of the show, the amazing Owen Dennis, who put his life and soul into the show, at least got to know that the show is being banished from the world, right? No. Heard that right? No. His statement says, I had no idea it was coming, neither did any show creator I've talked with nor any of their representatives. People have been working behind the scenes for days now trying to figure out what's going on. 1,000 phone calls, texts, and emails have been sent, but the problem is that the entirety of Warner Bros. Is undergoing a merger. This means that people who you would have normally talked to have been fired, moved, or quit, so no one has any idea how to get the information they need right now. I think the way that Discovery went about this is incredibly unprofessional, rude, and just straight up slimy. I think most everyone who makes anything feels this way. Across the industry, talent is mad, agents are mad, lawyers and managers are mad, even execs at the companies are mad. I can't think of a single person who works in animation and entertainment that when you bring this all up doesn't say, what the fuck are they doing? How do they plan to have anyone ever want to work with them again? Because why would we? What is the point of making something, spending years working on it, putting nights and weekends doing their terrible notes, losing sleep and not seeing our families if it's just going to be taken away and shot in the backyard? It's so incredibly discouraging, and they're definitely not going to be getting their best work out of whoever decides to stay. We're working at the intersection of art and commerce, but the people in charge have clearly forgotten that they'll have no commerce without the art. So the show got wiped from literally everywhere. Cartoon Network made it like the show didn't even exist. Now what? Where do we watch it? Well, now you have to pirate the show in order to watch it. In fact, the creator, Owen Dennis, actually urges you to pirate the show. Now, after talking about all of that, all of the cancellation, everything that happened to this poor show, I kind of want to talk about the show in general. I want to go through each season, explain the plot a little, explain the characters just a little bit. Do not listen to this absolute liar that's on screen right now. What I'm about to say isn't going to be brief. That is literally the rest of this video. Go into a little bit about the characters, and what I'm about to say in the video is that I'd love to deep dive into the characterization of all the characters throughout the seasons. But if you're not interested in hearing a brief summary of like all of the episodes of the show, you are allowed to just skip to the end of this video. If you want to listen to me talk more, I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, go listen to me. I would love to deep dive into every single character, but I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. So if you would be interested in me deep diving into the specific characters on Infinity Train, please comment Alan Dracula below. Just to let you know, this may contain a few spoilers. Plug your ears if that's something you don't want to hear. So, Infinity Train Season 1 follows a 13-year-old girl named Tulip. She's smart, resourceful, loves programming, and she loves raw onions, just eating them like a crisp apple, taking a big old bite. However, she's dealing with the emotional effects of her parents' recent divorce. But that's okay, because she's about to escape all of that, go to game design camp, which she's been looking forward to for a really long time. But her parents can't take her, so she runs away. After running away into the woods, she finds a mysterious train that she thinks will magically take her to camp. But when she boards, she realizes this train literally is magic and that it's not taking her to camp. She also begins to notice that each train car is different from the other, and that you often have to solve or complete tasks in order to move on to the next car. Tulip also notices a glowing number on her hand, and that is just another question she has on this infinite train. I had to. I'm sorry. She meets a quirky robot named 11 who has two sides. One is dark and sarcastic, while the other is cheerful with not a single coherent thought coursing through its cute little brain. Together, they begin to travel throughout the different cars. One memorable car is filled with friendly corgis, where Tulip meets Atticus, the corgi king, who decides to join her adventures. Tulip eventually learns that the number on her hand changes based on her decisions and actions, and also represents her progress made on the train, but little does she know the main purpose of the train yet. Tulip eventually enters the Crumb car, a reflective space where she confronts her inner thoughts, realizing that her reflection is trapped. She bravely decides to help it escape, setting the stage for the reflection to actually become the main character of Season 2. Throughout her journey, Tulip faces physical challenges and examines her emotional struggles. She ends up being forced to deal with the feelings of abandonment and loss caused by her parents' divorce, feelings that she's been burying and she has been brushing off. Her adventure becomes a path for self-discovery and healing. As the season goes on, Tulip meets various antagonists, including a clever cat and the main villain, Amelia. Interestingly enough, Amelia was supposed to be the protagonist of the 5th season, which got cancelled. What? But overall, looking at the first season of the show, it explores themes of found family, resilience, personal growth. It shows how Tulip learns to embrace her strength and confront her fears in order to help her grow. We as the audience learn that the train is a learning experiences for the passengers and that the purpose is to get your number down to 0 by growing emotionally, dealing with your inner trauma before you re-enter the outside world. Which personally, I think is a pretty cool form of therapy. Like, literally exposure therapy. Put you on a train. You can't get off until you learn and grow. But overall, I loved season 1. I loved Tulip. I personally related to her a lot. As someone with divorced parents, I thought it was really cool to see in a cartoon. I don't really see that often in kids shows, I feel like. So that was cool. Anyway, let's talk about season 2. Like I said before, season 2 follows a character we meet in the first season, MT, also known as Mirror Tulip, Tulip's reflection. Now loose on the train with the Flex, the mirror police after them. On this chase, they eventually stumble upon a room where they can take refuge, where they meet a super cute deer. Here he is, my man, who ends up being dubbed the name Alan Dracula by a passenger MT meets in the train named Jesse. The two don't get along at first, but slowly form a super cute friendship. Ship? Maybe a ship on a train? Is that controversial? I don't know. MT tells Jesse that they can help him get off the train by helping get his number down, so the three start making their way through the train cars together. However, eventually the police catch up with them and Jesse learns the truth about who MT is, that they are a reflection. And MT learns the true reason why Jesse's on the train in the first place and what he did to his little brother in order to look cool around his friends. But the two end up sticking together and Jesse ends up protecting MT rather than it being the other way around like it has been. With, of course, their faithful guardian angel, Alan Dracula. Eventually, we run into the cat again, as well as some new antagonists by the names of Grace and Simon, who believe that having the highest number is how the train works. They believe that 1-1 is evil, and that Amelia is the real conductor of the train, and that they need to make their numbers get just as high as hers. So they round up a gang of children. They slowly take over each train car, and making their numbers slowly spike since they aren't making any progress on the train. They want Jesse to join them and want nothing to do with MT, since she's technically a null, which is what they dub not a real person, which is the names they get for the NPCs on the train, which is very dehumanizing. But eventually the mirror police catch up with them once again at the worst possible time. Jesse finally gets his exit. MT wants to go with them, but it can't go through the door. Jesse disappears. MT is left with the cops. Lots of tears from the viewers ensue. No. What? I'm the viewer. This causes MT to have a major identity crisis, wanting to prove that they are a person, just like all the passengers on the train. They decide that if they can get a number, that they can get off the train. Jesse actually gets put on the train again with his new reason being that he left MT. MT is eventually able to convince 1-1 that they have a number, that if Jesse can't leave without them, then he can't get off the train. And so the season ends with both of them getting to exit the train, MT being able to finally give themselves a real name. Lake. They decide as they stare into a lake, seeing their own reflection for the first time rather than being someone else's. Sorry. This season overall focuses on embracing your own identity, self-worth, and that even when you feel like a copy or a mere reflection of someone else, you shouldn't try to be someone you're not, and you shouldn't try to fit in, that you're perfect the way you are. You are a person. You are you. Don't let anyone take that away from you. I loved the message of the season. I loved the characters so much. I personally related a lot to the season as well. I feel like I just end up relating to all the characters on the show somehow, some way. On to my favorite season, 3. Now I know what you're thinking. Why is 3 your favorite? I love angst. Now, the antagonists, Grace and Simon, that we met in season 2 are our main characters, and I just have to say, this was an awesome move by the creators, making the antagonists the new characters after the audience already dislikes them so much and has already been introduced to them and not as protagonists. Like, it's so interesting. It's so cool. Anyway. So as I mentioned a bit before, Simon and Grace run the Apex with a band of children trying to rate their numbers as high as possible. But when one of their raids goes wrong, Simon and Grace get separated from the kids and are many train cars away from their base. So they must travel together in order to get back to their base and their many children. The two end up finding a little girl named Hazel who has grown really attached to a gnoll named Tuba, who is a super cute gorilla with a really tragic backstory. Simon and Grace discover that Hazel has a number written on her hand, but it's not glowing green like theirs. Naturally, they get a little confused and tell Hazel that she can come join the Apex, be with other kids, and get a number that will glow like theirs. They decide to keep Tuba around since Hazel has grown attached to her, and we end up seeing the cat again, finding out that the cat actually was once Simon's friend on the train and abandoned him when he needed her most, when he was just a helpless child, and then this is when he met Grace as she saved him, and that's why the two are so close now. The two hash things out, and Grace realizes that her numbers have been going down, and she begins to worry. Grace has begun to really like Hazel and Tuba, however Simon has not. After seeing the cat, he remembers why he can't trust Noel. When the gang makes their way to the color clock car, Hazel wants Simon and Tuba to become closer, so Grace decides that they should pair up rather than her and Simon, just like things has always been. It seems like the two have really bonded at the end of the episode, but then Simon wheels Tuba up, kills her, and casually brings up the news to Grace and Hazel. Hazel obviously becomes super upset about this, and she becomes shape-shifting into a turtle thing. Kind of. This worries Grace, and she decides to keep it a secret from Simon because she saw what he just did to Tuba, and she obviously doesn't want Hazel to meet that same fate. And we see how different Simon and Grace are now. As we watch Grace shed tears over Tuba after Simon just killed her, how Grace wants to help Hazel properly mourn Tuba, and Simon could care less. The gang ends up running into Amelia, where Grace and Simon learn that she was actually the false conductor, and that everything that they believed all this time is a big lie. They run into Amelia since she is currently tracking down different anomalies and fixing their train cars, and Amelia discovers that Hazel is what she's been tracking, and that she's an anomaly. She wants to take her with her to learn more about her and take her throughout the train as she continues to fix cars. Grace is super upset when Amelia wants to do this, and Simon doesn't understand why Grace would be so upset, and he thinks Grace is hiding something, so he goes to get help from the cat and uses something to go into Grace's mind, figure out what's going on once and for all. He sees all the secrets that Grace has been keeping from him, so he basically traps her in her own mind, replaying on a loop. Grace is forced to confront her trauma with her mother, family, and the overall reason why she was put on the train in the first place. Eventually, she escapes this mind prison, and she's now done trying to lower her number and ends up making her way back to the Apex. She sees that Simon has told all of the children that Grace betrayed him and that they should wheel her. Simon and Grace end up fighting each other despite Grace's wishes, and Simon dies a death. Very brutal death. Remember what I said earlier about the thing in season 3? That's this. And now with Simon gone, Grace decides to form the new Apex and tells all the children what she's learned about the conductor, that they should be trying to make their numbers go down rather than up. And so in this season we saw that yes, the outside world of the train is cruel and fair and caring, and that some people don't want to believe in their faults or need to change from the perspective that the train is heaven on earth. And it's this warped mindset that sets the major theme for this season, empathy. The themes of the season are to choose compassion, confronting your own self-deprecations can lead to positive change and personal growth, and that no one is inherently bad, and that everyone has the potential to be a good person if they acknowledge their mistakes and are able to make a change. We see that through Grace. She starts off as this horrible person appearing to the audience, but as we watch, we see how empathetic she is to the world around her and how she has such a kind heart and is deep down a really good person, and that she's only been acting this way, acting out in order to get attention from those she loves and in order to keep people she loves in her life. She's such a complex character, and you see how kind-hearted she is and that she's not inherently bad at all. She's a super good person. And then we see Simon, who is a bad person. I personally try not to believe that there's bad people in this world. I try to believe that people do bad things, but Simon is just a pretty bad person, if I'm being honest, and I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that he didn't have a happy ending. I kind of liked that he didn't resolve anything. He didn't change. He got worse as the show went on, which was kind of cool to see. I feel like we don't see that in cartoons as much, especially from protagonists. And I feel like it's a great message for anyone watching, but including kids, that yeah, there are bad people in this world, and if you're bad things will come to you. But if you're bad and you realize your actions are bad and you start being good things will come to you. And that's a really great message overall. I loved how dark and complicated this season was. I loved it. I rewatch Infinity Train all the time, and I still gasp and rewind when I watch this season. I feel like I notice something new every time I watch it. It's so interesting. It's so short, but it's so good. There's so many emotions that go through me as I watch it, and I feel like that's why it's my favorite, because I love getting emotional over art. And this show is art. I love getting so emotional over these characters and getting so attached to them. I loved how they showed Tuba and Hazel's relationship. I love how they showed Tuba and how she was mourning her children, how Hazel wanted friends and how Hazel wanted to be like other kids and be with other kids. And I just loved I can't say a single bad thing about this season. I loved all of it. Now let's talk about season 4. That's significantly different from all the other seasons due to its laid back-ishness. I guess that's also what gave it a lot of backlash. I feel like a lot of people didn't really like that. You end off on season 3 and go to this season, which is a really big jump. It's super different. But they did do this on purpose because it was kind of almost to prepare us for the craziness that season 5 would have been. But anyway, season 4 is called Duet, with characters Mingy and Ryan, who have been best friends since they were born. They both love music and decide that they want to grow up, make a band, travel all across Canada, and eventually play in New York City. However, when they are about to perform in a high school competition, Mingy backs out last minute and Ryan performs all by himself. This causes the two to slowly stop talking to each other. Min ends up going to college, staying home working at the diner, while Ryan takes his dad's van and starts touring by himself. One day, the two end up accidentally reuniting at the diner, and Ryan tells Min that he should come with him and that they could try the whole band thing again. He declines, Ryan steals his keys, throws them onto a train, and the two get put on the train together, both sharing the same number. This was the thing that really caught my attention when I first started watching this season. I thought it was really cool that two characters have the same number. What if one of you is developing, if neither of you are developing? That's so interesting. The two end up meeting a floating belle named Kez, who is apparently a heavily wanted criminal, and a bunch of people on the train are after them. Kez offers to take the two to her place, so they begin to travel to the train car where she is from. It's kind of mentioned that Ryan's parents never really paid attention to him and ignored him in his dreams, and there's hints of a darker sense of parent neglect here, but we never really dive into it as the season's focus isn't really darkness. And likewise with Min, speaks often of the pressure of his parents that they put on him to study, work, and go to school. We see Ryan and Min talking around each other but not really directly communicating. Either of them see or try to understand the other's perspective. They aren't introspective about each other. The two talk, but they don't really communicate. With Ryan and Min's story, there's a lot of queer subtext between them. You can tell there's a little something going on there. We see a lot of blushing, hugs of appreciation, Ryan's rotation of the old girlfriend. Infinity Train's never really addressed it, but there's always something of the nature of two friends with wildly different personalities clashing before coming to an understanding. There's a episode where they enter the party car. They enter this club and learn that everyone there really likes Kez. Mingy and Ryan decide that they should perform, and Min actually seems really excited to play, but whenever they step out on stage for the show, Min finds his keys in his pocket and he bails. Ryan gets pretty angry and tries to leave the car, but Kez says that the party needs to succeed in order for them to be able to leave. leave. So Ryan ends up finding Min in the bathroom, and he admits that he wasn't ready for that, and he's unsure of what their end goal for all this is. He doesn't know how they'll start a band. He doesn't know how they'll succeed. He says that due to their race, they might not make it, it might not give them a chance, that they might be judged, ridiculed, that their parents haven't understood their dreams and they still won't. They don't believe in them. They think they're going to fail, and so Min thinks all of those things are true. He thinks they're going to fail. The two end up reminiscing and begin to play privately. Eventually in this episode, Kez's friends are pretty mean to her. They tell her they didn't really expect much from her, and they laugh at her, and so she joins the boys and they sit in the bathroom and they play a little song, and the exit opens and it's pretty cute. When we go into the art gallery cart, this is where it kind of actually starts getting a little dark for the season. Kez tries to bring the two together, but there seems like there's some like shadowy arm monster trying to constantly engulf them, and it's making their negative emotions rise and making them be upset without even thinking towards each other, and they just start accusing each other of things. Ryan accuses Min of being a shut-in with no future. Ryan actually ends up getting his exit, but then the door closes, so he ends up going to Mingi, and Min thought he was just gonna leave him. Eventually we reach the castle car. We learn Kez actually has a pretty deep backstory. We learned that the castle's name is Morgan, and that there used to be a passenger named Jeremy who was on the train, and that he lived there for 5 whole years, and that a lot of other passengers lived there with him, but they got their exit. That really made Morgan sad. But after those 5 years, Kez one time brings up the reason Jeremy was put on the train, his car crash that killed his mother and sister. Kez says that it wasn't his fault. He ends up getting his door open and he leaves the train, which makes Morgan, the castle, very upset and blames Kez for basically killing him. Min and Ryan both tell Kez that she wasn't wrong for helping Jeremy, that she did exactly what she was supposed to do. She helped Jeremy get off the train. Overall, eventually, the two end up getting off the train. They start their band, Chicken Choice Duty. Once again, they play Train to Nowhere. It's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty cute. But overall, we saw that Kez's dilemma is this lack of communication, forgiveness, and is a big parallel of what's happening between Ryan and Min, and that Kez's story has a lot of implications. The moral of season 4 is kind of the importance of being open and honest and communicating within a relationship, even if your friends go through changes, if they fail to express their feelings and needs clearly. The power of understanding can compromise a really strong bond, and that it's just important to be honest and communicate with the ones that you love and are close to. And it's super ironic, honestly, because a lot of people agree that the show didn't do this clearly, so I feel like they almost did that on purpose to convey the idea of this season. That's what I personally think, and that the show didn't really communicate itself as well, so the characters aren't going to communicate as well just as the show is. And I think that was a really interesting choice. Maybe it wasn't even a choice, maybe they just did that and that's how it is. Overall, Infinity Train is a masterpiece. It's an awesome show with super awesome characters, storylines, and it did not deserve the treatment it got. It does not deserve to be thrown into the cartoon graveyard. Now, if you want to watch this show, I encourage you to honestly pirate it, because that's the only way you're going to be able to watch it, unfortunately. And I do just want to remind everyone of the importance of supporting animation at a time where AI is taking a lot of artists' jobs. AI will never be able to recreate the emotion that artists have within their works. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like anything else about an Infinity Train, or if you would like me to talk about any other canceled shows, I will be doing so. But if you have any ones in specific you'd like me to talk about before the other ones, let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you next time, where I'm gonna talk a lot more.